you so much. I know we're starting a few minutes late here, but we have a really awesome lineup. We have some amazing speakers from down south. So I'm excited. Robert White is coming to moderate, so I'm appreciative of Robert coming out. And we're going to get to that's going to be the second panel or the second session of the day. I wanted to start today with a session that I'm basically calling the Spark. And you know, I've been doing this for, I don't know, 4 years, 3 years, something like that at this point. And what I realize is we're always trying to shake it up a little bit and trying to, take a different approach at how we bring information to you and kind of like pull good information out of the crowd here. So this morning, what I'd like to do is make this a little bit more of a discussion for everybody here. I just think it would be helpful for the crowd. And the way we're going to go about that is, by the way, I skipped ahead. I forgot this slide. For everybody who stays to the end, I have a special, I guess, gift to all of you. So hopefully you'll appreciate that when we're all said and done. So let's talk about the Spark. It's really the concept of ideas for growth. And I'm just going to go through a series of 10 different things, 10 different questions, and I want to crowdsource. I would love to just hear you guys' responses, hear what you think, and hopefully we could solve some problems for one another. Because I know, yes, I'm up here with the microphone, but that doesn't mean I'm the only expert in the room. We have a room full of experts, and I appreciate everything that you guys bring to the table on a daily basis to help your clients and help our company grow. So the first question I have for you is, and then I'm going to tell you some of this I'm going to give a little ad lib on. The other day, Chris Dixon, I want to give you a shout out. Chris is a manager, in the district, and Chris, he kind of ran with an idea. He said, listen, we have a whole group of brand new, call it rookie agents that just started with us. And I want to make sure that we get all these guys together and have just a group think of, what is going on? What are the challenges? How are you, overcoming, the adversities of your business? How are you getting going? We had 4 or 5 agents jump on. It was a smaller group, but it was a really powerful meeting, I felt. And one of the things that came out of it is I was sitting there listening, and I always get a kick out of this because I've been doing real estate. This is my 20th year in real estate. And I was sitting on that meeting and I was listening to some of the agents talk about how they got their first deal or what they were able to do to drive their business. And it was there was one particular thing that stood out to me that I had not even heard of what they were doing. And so I feel like I always learn from those around me. And I want to ask you, where did your first deal come from? And anybody could shout it out. And if it's it came from my brother-in-law, great, that's fine. But how did you actually acquire that business? Is it something that you had a conversation with them? Is it something you sent a postcard? Is it something that you did online? How did you drive your first, business that you actually did in your career? Please. Thank you for being so nice to volunteer first.
I just have my coffee. I'm ready to go.
Let's go.
Doing an open house for a really busy agent in the office. So I didn't know anything. So that was the first start, but it was like a $400,000 house, and people came in and they ended up buying a $900,000 house. So I always say, don't not sit an open house just because you don't think you're going to meet a higher end client. So
yeah.
That was my first deal.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Go ahead. Wait. Go ahead.
No, thanks, Chris. A postcard. I mailed my mentor, she said, that doesn't just happen. You don't just send a postcard and get a listing appointment and get a listing, but it happens.
So I'm going to touch on this one real quick because there was something that happened the other day to me a couple months ago that I was kind of blown away with. I went down to a very, very high-end, invite-only luxury real estate event. And it was down in Miami. The whole room was really filled with people that are doing this at the highest of levels production-wise in the country. And when I was there, quite literally the top real estate agents in the world were sitting in the room. And so some of the people were on stage and they were talking, and I had the benefit at this particular event that I was friends with the person that was running the event. So I got backstage access, and I was just sitting backstage. There was kind of an open area where you could see the stage from where we were. But then I was also able to have private conversations with some of the top agents in the world doing this on when I say luxury, these people are selling $100 million plus estates. So when you have this conversation with these people, what I found was really interesting is there were several of them, like literally the number one agent gets up and he starts speaking and he talks about postcards. And they're mailing postcards to, I mean, just the ultra luxury. And so I don't know, maybe I'm just like kind of like stuck on, this image of there's more to it. Like many of us think, we always think like, well, there's got to be more to, to this than just sending a postcard. And I was just pressing him on this issue. I was like, hold on. So what postcards are you actually sending? And he's like, just postcards. And I was like, just listed and just sold? And he's like, yes. And I was like, okay, what else? It was like, is it the material that's different? Like, what gives it that luxury appeal? And his response was just postcards. The same thing you send, the same thing everybody sends, just postcards. And so I said, well, is there anything that you're doing different, like whether it's a call to action or whatever else? And this is something that I found interesting, is the idea of sending postcards is the exact same regardless of market. So to your point, they work. They definitely work. I had a top producer in my office who does a ton of business like years ago, who was a $70 million producer, where he stopped sending postcards to test it out, and his business dropped by 25% during that period. And it was like, it was an unbelievable swing. So that still works in today's market, there's no question. But when I pressed this person about like the postcard thing and what are you doing differently, what he said is, we don't spend more money on the materials of the postcard or sending anything special. Because I'm thinking like Porsche and Ferrari sending these boxes. Like, you ever see like the Coldwell Banker black box? Like, it is awesome. So that's where my mind was. And if you've never seen it, you should check that out because it's really a good listening tool. But what I was thinking is of like this higher end quality. He said the postcards are the same thing you send out. The difference, and this was the catch, is we spend all of our money in terms of like high end, like, over the top marketing on the digital brochures. And the reason that they're spending all that money on digital brochures is when you get into this high end ultra buyer pool, you're really catering to an international buyer pool. So postcards and like actual print media don't work as well trying to tap into people across the globe. And I thought that was an interesting little twist that I heard. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So my first transaction with my wife, Kathy, I was newer to the business, so we were doing Realtor.com. And I remember I got this phone call one day, and there was a woman from West Virginia, and she was asking about a property, and I says, oh, would you like to see it? She goes, well, we're really kind of working with someone. I says, well, are they available to show you the property? And she says, well, we're not sure. And I says, well, how can you get here? She goes, well, we come up on the train. And I says, well, my wife and I will pick you up first thing in the morning, and we'll take you to some homes. So we did that 3 times, and on the 3rd time, she went into a home in Leonardo on the water, and we bought the house. Well, she purchased the house, and it was really an exciting transaction. And the best part of it is Kathy was able to do beach hunters with it, which we got more business from that. So the property was $1.05 million, and that was my first.
Nice. Thank you. Please. Sorry.
My first listing 18 years ago was from an expired. I was competing against another realtor, and I ended up beating out on it. But the most important thing about that listing was I got 4 other listings after that. So they sold the house, bought another house in Jackson, ended up selling that house 5 years later, and I was on both sides of the deal.
Nice. Thank you. Who else? Anyone? I'll tell you a story that's a fun one. And I said this story the other day, and I love to share this one. It wasn't my first transaction, but it was very early on in my career. I did a rental in Summit for like $1,500. And it was a young couple. They didn't have any kids. I rented them the apartment, treated them like I would any other client with respect, and like, just did everything I could for them. We wound up finding like a garden apartment in Summit. And they, about a year later, a year and a half later, give or take, whatever it was, I'll come to you. They actually reached out to me and they were like, listen, we're interested in buying a house. So I said, great. So I wound up showing them houses. They eventually bought in New Providence. I want to say they bought for $550, something like that, a year later, a year and a half later, and sold them that. Years go by, maybe 2-3 years later, they called me up and they said, we've been eyeing this property. We really want to buy it. It's a special property, blah, blah, blah. So I go out to go see it. It's 1.6 million. It's, height of the market in New Providence, So I sell them that house. I sell their house that was, call it 550 for like 750. They refer me in that transaction. We have another really nice transaction together. They refer me to a friend of theirs. Their friend buys a house for like 700, and a couple years later sells that house for 900. So all of these transactions and more, because there were other like webs that came out of it, but I'll leave it at that, it's just amazing to me. It came from a $1,500 rental. And I just think that like when people are like, I don't do rentals, and I'm like, okay, you don't have to do rentals, but it adds up. Like, you never know where your business comes from. And I just think it's a pretty cool thing about our business. Chris, can you go to Will, and I'm gonna go over here, okay? Sitting at the table right there.
Morning, Chris. I'm amazed nobody mentioned floor time. My first deal was floor time. I was sitting there at the desk, I was bored to death, and this buyer just walks in and says, hey, we want to see this place at Riverwalk Way in Clifton, right? And I was at the Clifton office back then. And they're telling me all about the unit. We go schedule the appointment, I go see it. They're walking through, they're telling me everything about the unit and about the community. And in that moment I realized, am I ready to do this job? Like, they know more than me, right? And it was a little embarrassing, but at the same time it was eye-opening. I had to get prepared, I had to get ready to show property. And great relationship, we still talk. But yeah, no, we don't give floor time enough value, and sometimes we feel like it's a waste of time. That's your choice. There's so many things you could be doing while you're sitting at that desk. It's just you're working from a different location in that moment. But you can fill your schedule with things to do, right? And when that walk-in comes in, when that call comes in, it seems like a blessing, but you put yourself in that position, right?
I'll tell you a quick aside about floor time. Years ago, I was sitting the desk in Summit, and we would have two agents sit the desk at the time, and we'd kind of flip back and forth. And while I was sitting there, like my time period had ended by like maybe 2 minutes or so, and a legit call-in came in for a $10 million property. And I was like, ah! So it works, there's no question.
Hi, so when you were talking about rentals, when I first started, months passed, no business, and then I started to look in the classifieds, and I actually reached out to someone from New York who put a classified ad in looking for an apartment. And I said, I can help you find an apartment, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But they ended up getting an apartment, renting a house, and the next year, so it took me actually like 5 months to do my first deal, which was that. And then that very next year, I was the #1 agent in our office.
Wow, that's great.
That was Prudential, yeah.
Congrats. Anyone?
Mike, we got two in the back.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Hey, Mike, John Variano. Like Will Alfaro, when I was an agent back in '05, my very first deal, it was a Sunday afternoon. I get a call from Bernice Makita, which at that time was a really top agent in our office. And she goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm watching football on a Sunday. She goes, well, get dressed and get your tail over to my listing at Riverwalk. And sure enough, that person wound up buying. You know how difficult it was to write a contract at like 5 o'clock on a Sunday? No one at that time. Well, actually, there were some people in the office, but first transaction, it was a little overwhelming, but we got it done. So that was it.
Go ahead, Chris.
So, like Will and John, my first transaction also was a walk-in. I worked for a small little brokerage in Neptune that focused on an area called Chalk River Hills. So we did get a lot of walk-ins. They came in on a Saturday. I was still working full-time at my full-time job, but the office closed on Saturdays at noon and Sundays at noon. And I stayed there till 5 o'clock. So it wasn't officially floor time. I just kept the office open to learn how to do my business. And had a walk-in come in, went and showed 3 houses, came back and wrote a contract that same afternoon. I had no idea how to write a contract. I had only been doing it maybe 20 days. And back then, had very little use of computers except for the MLS, but everything was in a file, right? I went back to the file cabinet, I pulled out another agent's transaction, pulled out the contract, and we went through it together, line by line. I copied what they wrote in the contract. And I said, this is my first transaction, you're my guinea pig, and they said, we love it. But that was my first.
That's what everybody wants to be, the guinea pig. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, so Michael, my first sale, 1975, you were not born.
I was not.
Okay.
84.
I always get a kick out of a lot of the things we talk about, relativity. You know, there were no computers in 1975, cell phones, whatever. And also on floor time, I took all the nighttime floor time off. My office was open till 8 every night, and I had no life and everyone else did, so I just stayed. I thought a closing was when you turned the coffee pot off. Okay, so people called in, came in, and I showed the house for $34,000. You know, when people tell me prices have got to stop, it's just can't, come on. It's all right. But at any rate, I showed them one house. This was my first week in the business. And as we got back in the car, they said, we'll take it, just like the old Honda commercial. And I drove back. I realized not only do I not know how to fill out a contract, I don't know where they are in the office. So here's how I closed them. I said, look, buying a house is a really big deal. I want you guys to go home and think about it. Talk to your friends and relatives, and I'll be here in the morning if you still want to buy the house. Because, so they left. And now I am turning the coffee pot off. It's about 10, 15 minutes later. Turned the coffee pot off, about to lock the door, and they came walking back in the office. They said, look, as it happens, you don't know this, we've looked at a lot of houses. We like this house. We'll help you with whatever paperwork.
So they closed you. Hey, I love that story. Hold on, before we skip to another question, I just have I don't know, this is just like an aside that I'm curious about. Show of hands, who actively works in the office on a daily basis? Okay. I specifically asked daily on purpose. So I would say half the crowd. I got to be honest with you, I'm sitting here listening to, both these last guys, Robert and Don, and to me, like, when I was in sales, I lived in the office. I slept in the office. And I know that some people cringe at the thought of that, but I just felt like real estate, it soaks into your pores through osmosis if you're around it. The people speaking real estate around you, it's such an important thing. And one of the reasons that I'm at Coldwell Banker, one of many reasons, is because we have offices. I don't want to work for a virtual company. I don't want to work for a company that doesn't have people. That to me is one of the most important parts about real estate. So I really appreciate you guys saying, that you're closing the office yourselves, because I used to do the same thing. I didn't care about floor time hours. If the hours extended, if I wanted to stay there longer, the office was open. And I agree with that completely. Go ahead, Chris.
I'm gonna stand only because everyone else was, but one of the things that came up was how floor time or this, and I realized there was another category called stalking. So my first listing was basically that. I knew I needed to get a listing. I was new to real estate and I just wasn't sure how to go about it. I had 2 little babies at the time, twins, and I used to walk around town and walk around town and walk around town. And I used to go into our local Liberty Drug, which is still there, and the gal that was you would call the soda jerk or ice cream jerk, I guess that was the old term. There was an old-fashioned counter, and when I would come in, she would talk to the kids, and then I would talk to her. Her name was Katie, and Katie and I developed a relationship.
Can I ask you guys a favor? You could do it now, you could do it afterwards, and I'll even help you. We need to get 6 chairs from outside, whenever you can.
And she wanted to close for the 5-year anniversary. So
Yeah,
I
right
said,
here.
of course, well, I can
6,
help you
yeah.
if you want.
Thanks.
I will help
Thank
with
you.
that. And she said, well, my son lives in town and they work with these agents. They're big agents at the company was Turpin at the time. And I think he wants me to go with them. I said, okay, no problem. But if I could just come see the house, I could give you some ideas. So she liked me, so she let me come see the house. So of course, I ran around like a lunatic preparing my first presentation, which I didn't have ready. And I went in and I went head to head with those agents. She ultimately won with her son and said, I want to go with this girl. I like her. She's young. She's got energy. I like her.
Okay.
So she did. We went in a multiple offer. Guess who brought the buyer?
They do. So it was great, it was a win-win, right? So it was the thing we said, well, maybe they'll bring the buyer, like any agent wants to do that. And the fact that we had a leaky oil tank underneath the deck, that they stuck with us because they knew the family, that they kept their buyer in line. I got it rectified. We closed the day of the 5-year anniversary. So that's my story. Stalking works.
Nice. Thank you. Go ahead, Chris. One last one.
So back in 2000, when you started with Coldwell Banker, you had to take 3 weeks of fast start. And you had to do your sphere of influence, and you had to have a minimum of 25 people on it. I thought I would literally die. I didn't even have 25 friends. So I put my mother-in-law on my sphere of influence, and then by the end of the class, you had to send a letter out. So I sent this letter out to my mother-in-law with my cards and asked her to put them in her office, which she was a seamstress. So she puts my business cards in her seamstress office in Long Island, and this woman comes in to have her pants shortened. And she said, oh, your daughter-in-law is a realtor? And she said, yes. She goes, oh, my son wants to sell a condo in Mahwah. Is that near her? And my mother-in-law, of course, had no idea because she's in a whole nother state. So she picks up the business card and she said, yes, she's in Mahwah. And she said, oh, okay, I'll have my son call her. And she said, if you want these pants hemmed, you will definitely have him call her. So he calls me up, he's like, I want to list my condo. I'm like, oh, okay. I had literally no idea. I had to get somebody in the office to come help me and took the listing. So the sphere of influence works, and if anybody says you only put people that are right in near your area, it is not true, because you never know who you're going to meet, and especially with social media, your friends are all over the place. They should all be on your sphere.
I love it. Is Charlene here? Charlene Furia? She usually is, but so I got to tell you, like, years ago, Charlene asked me to come and speak in Sparta. And she was like, I want you to give a presentation. I don't even remember what the presentation was about. And I said, I'd be happy to, but I have a request for you. And she was like, okay. I go, I'll come out and speak in Sparta, but I want to go to lunch after, and I want to pick your brain on things that you're doing in your marketplace. And just want to learn, because I always feel like that's, it's the best thing to do, is just learn from those around you. So Charlene said something to me that cracks me up to this day. She says, every single new agent that I have, one of the things that I start with is I have them, I don't want to say force, because you guys are independent contractors, but she basically requests that all of them do, I forget what it was either 10 or 20 fake listing presentations. And, and it was, you have to do a fake listing and presentation, and you have to literally reach out and say, listen, I'm in real estate, I need to practice this, I'd like to do a listing presentation for you on your house. And go and present to all of these people, it's all make-believe. But she said, I always do that because people list houses from that. Because what happens is you sit in front of that seller, you give them their price, you talk to them about all the things that you could do for them, and they realize, I kind of want to sell my house. This sounds great. I want that number. And I always laugh about it because, like, it's true. Like, you get in front of enough people, good things happen. And so I appreciated that about Charlene, and I just wanted to mention that. All right, we're going to skip to question number 2. What was the first duplicatable tactic that worked for you? So, hold on one second. So just to be clear about this, if you did something, you said something to something, it was random and it fell out of the sky, a piece of business came on your lap, that works too. But that's not what I'm talking about. I want stuff that is tried and true, and it became a revenue stream for you. You have something?
I cold-called, and it was duplicatable, and I stuck to the script, and I learned it, and I paid money for it, and I was new in the business, and that was a lot of money to me to pay for a coach.
Yeah.
But it worked, and I continued to get business. And
what type of cold calls?
Just listed, just sold around other people's listings because I didn't have any.
Yeah.
And got business, and I specifically tried busy roads, so my sign would be on.
So circle prospecting.
Yeah. And then circle prospecting.
Yeah.
I got a listing.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Please. Oh shoot, I'm so sorry, bro.
You're good.
Knocking things over. Go ahead, Lynn.
What worked for me was joining everything.
That's what I did.
I became a member of the Junior Women's Club, the church choir, the school SEA, and honestly, there's nothing like that
that grassroots effort, getting to know people, and I still get.
You're still a member of everything.
Amount of business in my area and community from all of the things I've joined.
Yeah, it's fair.
Still actively involved in
All everything. Everybody knows Lynn. Anybody else? Duplicatable systems or process?
I did.
Please.
I heard that door knocking works, and I'm not afraid to meet people, so I figured let me do it. I was actually, I hosted, this was early when I started, so I hosted my second open house, and I heard that if you knock around the neighborhood, around the open house, invite neighbors, and I took not long, but about an hour and a half, knocked on a few doors, and there was somebody who actually took the time. Of course, I always apologize for bothering them. And she talked to me and she said, yeah, we're thinking of selling, but we're not ready. And then I said, well, I have some construction experience. I could help you, get the house ready, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, 6 months. It took me 6 months. We kept in touch. I got her listing. I gave her a referral to North Carolina. So I got like $3,000 there. And then, what else did I do? Yeah, anyway, I think that's the two things.
That's great. Please, you can pass it right back.
It's not that I've done a lot of duplicate work, but what I created was a cartoon character of myself. And I put it on a note card. And I wrote a personal note to every one of my past clients. And they loved the picture. They thought it was so clever, so they called me and they go, I got your card, it's so cute.
Yeah.
And I just took a regular picture and my husband converted it into a cartoon character.
Very cool.
And it wound up.
It's unique.
Yeah, and I got my calls from past clients, which, because I hate calling the past clients, because you have nothing to say after hello. And so,
We can work on that.
but they called me, and so I was able to reconnect with a lot of past clients.
All right, awesome. Anybody? I sat down with one of the top producers in the marketplace in Essex County the other day from a competitor. He's, we were talking about potentially making a move, and it was a recruiting appointment. He said something to me that I thought was pretty awesome. So he was talking to me about things that he's done that are duplicatable to build his business. Because I always ask, if I'm on a recruiting appointment, they're going to learn from me and I'm going to learn from them. And that's just how I roll on appointments. And so one of the questions I said, talk to me about how you get your business. And he said to me, well, one of the things that I think agents do a poor job with, and I'm paraphrasing obviously, is I don't think that we do a good enough job going after our feeder markets. And so I was like, okay, now in the markets that he serves, feeder markets for him are Jersey City, Hoboken, Brooklyn, Queens, some of Manhattan. Those are primarily the markets that his clients come from. And so I said, all right, well, what are you doing in those markets? And he said, I run all of my buyer workshops in those markets. And I've basically partnered, he's even partnered with agents in those markets to host workshops for their clients about moving to Jersey or moving to the suburbs. And I said, okay, great. That's a pretty awesome idea. Now, most of the people in the room might think that that's a good idea and consider doing it, but I'm talking about duplicatable. And what really struck me about this strategy for him is he doesn't just do it once in a while, twice a year. He does this twice a month. And what I started to realize is the rhythm to it is really what drives this, because friends are telling friends and everybody's talking to each other. And I said, where are you doing it? He's like, honestly, we just get a restaurant space. He goes, sometimes, I go, how many people show up? 5 to 12 people is really what they're shooting for. It's not crazy amounts. It's 5 to 12 people. But 5 to 12 people twice a month, over the course of years and years and years, that adds up. That adds up very, very quickly, and it's not crazy expensive. So to me, and by the way, here's the best part about it is, if you think about it, the workload related to that never changes. It's always the same thing. You just got to try to get people there. So that's the hardest part about it. But the content is always the same. You don't have to think about a new presentation every single time. You think about one presentation, you put it together, you run out and do it. So I thought that was a really awesome strategy in terms of duplicatable. Anybody else before I move on to the next question? All right. Next question. What is your biggest challenge today? What are you struggling with? We're here to solve problems. What's the biggest issue? Technology? What about technology?
Just so
There
many
you go.
options. I just struggle with all of the different marketing technology options, maximizing, getting my information out there. It's like there's such a huge cloud and I have to funnel it into something that I use, and I'm not doing that as well as I should be.
So part of the gift that I'm going to give you at the end relates to technology, so hopefully it'll be helpful for you. But what I would say that I find very interesting is I go to all these sessions all across the country, top agents left and right, and most of them don't use the same software. Like they use all different types of software. Everybody's like, oh, I swear by this. Like, and the truth is like they should swear by it if it works for them. But like when it comes to technology, like the number one thing that I would suggest is pick something, whatever it is, pick something and become great at it. Because if you're like too often, and I fall a victim to this too, like we all do, we kind of like go in a million different directions and like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. And I heard this is the best system out right now. Yeah, they all have their, bells and whistles and how they work for you. And it's, any direction is a good direction. Like sitting still is not a good thing. But the truth is like when it comes to technology, embrace something and then just run with it. Like I'm right now like on my like kick of AI. Like and I think that I'm probably going to be in that direction for a while, just because I want to just learn as much as I can on that front. But there's so many different options for you. Just pick one. Anybody else in terms of challenges, please?
So I'm not sure if it's really new to today's challenge, but I would say managing expectations. That seems to be the biggest challenge, especially sellers right now.
Okay. Can you give me a little bit more in terms of what is the challenge with sellers and managing their expectations today?
So sellers are still believing that it is 100% seller's market and they're going to get 25% over asking. And they're not going to have to fix anything during home inspection. And the buyer now is feeling like it's becoming a little bit more of a neutral market in our area, still more of a seller's, but becoming a little bit more of a neutral market. And the buyers feel like I'm paying all this money. I want everything fixed. So I think keeping everybody on a fair and reasonable playing field has been a big challenge.
Interesting. All right, so I'm going to break that down in a couple different ways. So my first question, and this is just across the crowd, do you guys feel like this is an extreme seller's market today? No. Do you feel like it's a seller's market? Yes. Do you feel like it's transitioning to a buyer's market? No. Do you feel like it's more neutral? No? More neutral? So, interesting. So we got mixed. I would say like right now there's a lot of, and I'm just to talk about seller expectations. This is just my 2 cents in looking at the marketplace, and we could all analyze the market in different ways. It's been a little bit of a challenging couple months because of what's going on in the economy. And the reality is tariffs in particular, like and inflation in particular, and obviously depending on where you are, inventory is still a challenge. Those things play a role, and it's a marketplace that's kind of, it's difficult to put your finger on at times. So are we all feeling that? Yep. Yeah. I'm not making any predictions on the market right now because I don't see any reason to say it's going to go up, it's going to go down. Like it's to be seen. Like, and a lot of it plays, like there's external factors right now that play a role that we're just like, we got to work through. I do think the tariff thing is going to be a short-term issue rather than a long-term issue. Again, that's just my 2 cents, and only because most tariff wars are not forever, like 6 months, let's call it. So I think there's going to be an end to that, and maybe it turns into a worse situation, trade war with China, but again, that's to be seen. Does anybody? I want to, outside of like the macro-ness of the market and talking about like what we're seeing in regards to whether it's neutral, whether it's a seller's market, buyer's market, does anybody want to specifically address how you would address, let me say it differently, how would you address your seller who's thinking that they're going to get 25% over asking price and thinking that they don't have to do anything to get their house sold. Does anybody have a good strategy for that? I know. Everybody's like, no. Go ahead. Bold soul, I love you.
I just really say that you're going to get your price, and you'll probably get over your list price, but be prepared because the buyers are going to come in and want you to fix things. They're not buying it as is.
When I do their net sheet, I put a line item, home repair, and I always put that $1,500 on there. So they see the net sheet, and you're gonna have a.
So this is before you actually, this is not after you accept an offer. This is at the listing table?
Yeah, I go with the net sheet.
It's interesting.
Guesstimate of what we're gonna get.
Okay.
Now, anything, I'll use like a base price.
Yeah.
So I'll say, this is the minimum you're gonna get, because we know it's gonna sell for more than that. So when I do that net sheet, I put a line item for home repair items, not just guesstimate. Sometimes I put 1,000, 1,500.
Yeah.
And so they know the base. So anything over that, it's greedy.
I'm going to add one thing. Hold on one second. I'm going to just add something to this. I love the concept of BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So BATNA is the idea of, if I have an offer in hand, what's my best alternative offer? So to me, like, it's such an easy way to get sellers off of their stupidity. Because when you have a seller, if you have like multiple offers, and listen, if you don't have multiple offers, it's a different conversation. But like, it actually is the same conversation, just tweaked a little bit. But what I would say is this, is like, if I have a seller, and I'm just gonna give you hypotheticals, but we have one buyer that's $50,000 higher than the next buyer, and they're asking for $25,000 in repairs. Well, it's still $25,000 more to that seller than the next best option. And I keep going back to that and play that game with them because I think it works. Hold on one second. I have one right here first.
To the question of pricing by the sellers, I use the listing appointment. I usually know most of the sellers, my clients, and I just ask questions. I challenge them why they feel their house is worth what it's worth. And I just keep asking questions, and I'm reading the body language. And since the spouse typically is there too, I notice the reaction of what one thinks and the other one feels.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to the point where he'll say, well, so-and-so said, are they a realtor, I'd say?
Yeah.
Well, Zillow said, well, has Zillow been in your home?
Yeah.
And I just keep going at it. And it's so much easier to get them down to a realistic price that's fair and marketable than to have that tough conversation later.
Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead, Will. Or
Hey, Mike, who was that? Who was that just spoke?
I'm sorry.
Blanca Merced from Middletown.
What was the first name?
Blanca.
Blanca. You need to talk. No, that was great because obviously managing, what matters to that client is important, right? Understanding why are they even moving? That's very important. To the specific question about, hey, I want this number, and I'm not getting for instructions, right? When you get that question, it's almost like you're giving them an answer, you're going right to the end of the movie. What's your value? You have to really focus on the story. If you uncover that matters to them, the highest possible price, the highest net price where they don't have to spend any money on inspection or appraisal, how are you going to share that story with them? What is marketing the home look like with you to help them reach that goal, right? And we're going to role play. You're not role play, but I'll share what I would do in that scenario, right? You have, obviously the price matters to them. So, Mr. Seller, would you agree that if we want to get the most money, do you think traffic through that door matters? The more people through that door, do you think that would help you find that person that's willing to pay more, right? And then, how do we do that? How do we attract more people? How do we manage their perception? Are we going to let them see each other and perhaps react emotionally? Are we going to set expectations? Are we going to set deadlines? Are we going to create that urgency? And this is what I do from beginning to end, even if it takes you an hour. And guess what? When you're done, it's not going to matter anymore. They know that if they hire you, they're gonna get the best results, even if that number is lower than they thought. So think about that. If the story makes sense, and at the end they feel, you know what? I know that I'm gonna get the best results with you. And even if that number is 10,000 less or 10,000 more, it doesn't matter. When I'm at the closing table, I'm gonna feel good. And that's what you should focus on. Think about what matters to them, and then how are you gonna deliver that in a way that makes sense? And it is a story. It takes an hour. Sometimes it takes repeating it 9 times for them to get it. And you know what? Sometimes it takes walking away. I have walked away. Hey, I want the best results for you. Given what you're telling me, I won't have enough resources to even promote the home to deliver the value that you want. So I cannot work with you because I don't want you to be in that position where you're not winning in this market. And get up and leave. The minute your butt comes off the chair, they're like, hey, hold on, okay, sit down. Let's talk about commission again. Let's make this work. The problem is we easily fold. We easily just answer questions without discovery. We're in a rush. What's the rush? You have an opportunity to get $1 million listing. You've waited 3 months for this, and now you're rushing? Do the job right.
Go ahead, Jay.
Just wanted to add a little bit to that. I always taught my agents is don't lose a listing on price. It should really be about your presentation. Once they choose you, you win. If the person has a need to sell, then you take the listing. I'm not a fan of walking away. I understand in Will's position, he does a lot of business. Maybe he can be a little bit more particular in what he takes and what he doesn't take. But I think you need to get the listing, sharpen your skills for price reductions later if you need them. Don't make the presentation about price. I used to do that as an agent years ago. I lost a listing once on price and never lost a listing again. I called the guy up who listed with someone else, congratulated him, said, I think I could have done better. He said, well, you did a great pricing presentation. I said, well, that's good to myself. And he said, I just couldn't list at that price. And I said to him, yeah, but I said to you, you're gonna pick the price. He said, but you didn't believe in my price.
Mm.
And I never forgot that. And after that, I never made it about the pricing presentation. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but don't make that the focus. Talk more about pricing strategy than pricing. And that's about, price it well, go through the comps, and then when you're done, ask them what they think. And I know somebody sitting out there going, yeah, but then they say to me, you give me the price. But if you do it properly and you ask them more than once, not be obnoxious, but they will typically give you what they think. And on occasion they're low, on occasion they're high, and you can have that conversation. But one of the things I've been saying to sellers recently is, you need to be happy with the price, because in the end, I don't want you to be sitting in a chair somewhere a year from now, scratching your head saying, I wonder if I could have got more. Because sometimes they'll get 5-10% over and they still don't know if it was what they should have gotten. So don't make it about pricing, make it about your presentation. Like Will said, get the listing and work the listing.
It's like you read my mind because I'm doing a whole pricing strategy thing later this afternoon. I'm coming over to you. I'm going to tell a quick story before I hand this mic over. I had an agent come up to me about a couple months ago, whatever it was, and she said to me, she was like, I have this client who wants X for their house. And I'm just going to throw fake numbers in because I don't remember what the numbers were. But they said that they want $1.5 million. And they have an offer from a neighbor at $1.3 million. And I said, okay, and they said they don't want to sell to the neighbor. They want to go to market. They're interested in me doing exclusive and all that stuff, which is a lead into later as well. But the agent, I said to her, I go, well, what is it worth? She said, I don't know, $1.25 million. and I was like, seriously? I was like, you think it's worth less than they could get from that buyer? And she was like, I don't know. She was like, it's a weird house. And she was going through this whole thing with me. And I said, is there a chance that they get what they want? And she was like, yes. I go, be honest with the seller. Tell them that there's a chance, but the reality is this is the range that I would price it in if that other offer wasn't on the table. And so she did. She was very honest about everything. We brought the house to the market. We wound up getting like 4 offers and it pushed into the range that they wanted. She sold it. And I think about this. She was telling me for like a couple weeks that I don't know if I should take this. I don't know if I should put it to market. I don't know. They have this other buyer. I'm not going to make any money. I'm spending money and all these things. And I think to myself, well, the reason that it happened is because you gave it a shot. Like sometimes you just got to give something a shot.
I have to stand up for this to salute my mentor, Jerry. I learned this from him. Never argue about pricing. You just take the listing, but you review the number very quickly. No more than 2 weeks, you reduce the price. And also I learned, from Colleen, she gave me a very good phrase to use. There's no sellable house unless only unsellable price. So that's the line using.
I like it. Thank you. See, I got the best surrounding me. All right, so we're going to skip to the next question. I'm just going to do a time check here. Ooh, okay. How do you create an unbelievable client experience? Is there anything that you guys are doing differently to make sure that your client has an incredible experience? You got one? I saw half a hand, so I'm still calling on you. She gave me one of these.
Saying constant communication.
Constant communication. So communication is key. So I agree with that. Constant communication is key. All right. I'm sorry, I'm stepping on your purse.
Answering their questions before they know to ask them.
Expand upon that.
Well, because of our experience, what we do day in, day out, we know that they're going to need whatever, fire safety inspection. We know that they're going to need to get their landscape, fixed up for showing. So I provide all that information even before they think to ask for it.
Do you provide it like verbally, or do you have a system? Like, do you have recordings? Do you have like documents? Like, what does that look like?
So, my systems are just emails that I have in place that I send on a regular basis. And, the list of preferred contractors and stuff. Of course, you have 2 or 3, so you're not leading them to one person, but just giving them everything that they might possibly need before they realize they're going to need it.
Awesome, thank you. When I was in sales, I had basically a cheat sheet for buyers, and it was, here are all the steps to buying a home, and I would give it to them, and then as soon as we would get to one step, I would send them a more detailed thing on the next step, and it made my life so much easier because we were like kind of getting over challenges before they became challenges. But that was definitely something in terms of creating the experience.
Just one thing I thought of, and it ties into the last question you had too, to make sure my buyers and sellers are comfortable with price. Back on that point, I take my sellers out to look at houses. I send them open house lists.
Smart.
And I go heavily into comps and I say, look at this kitchen, look at your kitchen. This is a finished basement, this is not a finished basement. And we go out together, and then they'll say, okay, I see, this is worth less, this is worth more. And I think it just makes them feel like they priced it right, their experience was better.
Yeah.
Both buy and sell.
Please.
So 3 times we've done this, Catherine and I. We're very good with clients out of state. Like, we've had a California, a Florida buyer, and a New York buyer. So I've picked up people at the ferry, I've picked people up at the airport. If you can't come into town, I'm very good with the permission of the listing agent virtual showings. We do that quite a bit. We've actually wrote an offer with a pilot for United on a property. It took about 45 minutes to go through the house, and you go through it, and then you ask him, I said, Jim, anything we missed? He goes, well, let's just go back to this room. And we did write an offer, but we got outbid. And, but that's one good thing we're very good with out of state. Keep contact all the time. Like Kat says, I'm the midnight ranger. I talk to a lot of West Coast time people, like very late at night while it's only 9 o'clock there. I'm talking to them at 12 o'clock, going over anything they need and homes. And, the virtual showings are really big, especially when they can't come there.
Makes sense. Thank you. Anybody else want to talk about client experience? Otherwise, I'm going to move on. So I want to introduce a couple of you. I don't know if you guys know these 3, but Jay Crowder, Danielle Torado, and David Elkins. So I usually don't ever talk about like our partners, and maybe shame on me. But the truth of it is like I wanted to highlight them. I had the pleasure of having them here today. And to give you like context, like think of Rob Norman, that's Jay Crowder on the mortgage side. So in terms of like the hierarchy of the company and whatnot, what I wanted to highlight them for is I was thinking about client experience, and I think this is like the perfect way to highlight them. We all deal with mortgage people, we all deal with title people, we all deal with like all different partners we have, and they're not all built the same, is the truth of it. So I could get up here and I could talk about product, and they do have some awesome products, and we have some great LOs and loan officers in the company. But what I appreciate about them more than anything is when I had a conversation, and whenever I have a conversation with them, it's always the thought process of what could I do for you? Like, how could I help you? How can we better serve your agents? What do we need to do to give you guys better service and to improve the experience for you, for your clients? And I just feel like when you're thinking about the hierarchy of a company, especially a mortgage company, and like, what do you want to hear from them? That's what I want to hear from them. I want to know that my partners are looking out for our clients, that my partners are looking out for our agents, that my partners are doing everything possible to try to create an experience that's a good one for the people they serve. And I would be remiss not to bring that up, because I felt like this is a perfect opportunity to kind of highlight them, and I appreciate you guys coming today, I sincerely do. But I wanted to do that because this is not something that like I'm being forced to do. This is not something that I'm like, can you please give us a plug? It's none of that crap. It's more of like, they're in town, they're coming to like basically support, and we're gonna get together later. And what I realized is like, you know what? Like when I'm thinking about client experience, like I appreciated that was like the way that they approached me. So shout out to you guys. Thank you very much. What I also wanted to just ask, and this is because there was something that they said to me that I thought was like really impactful. They have a program running right now, and I know that like every person in here has a different like, hey, this is my loan officer of choice. Some of those loan officers may be in this room, some of them may be in your local market, in the offices that you work. Some of them may be at a competitor. They have a program that they're running right now that's basically paying a lot of money to anybody who refers a loan officer in. I mean, I think, is it up to $50,000? So everybody in here wants to make more money, and you guys all have like people that you're working with, whether it's in your marketplace or in the local area, you name it. If they're not with Guaranteed Rate Affinity and you have somebody that you want to refer, like they're paying big money right now to like sit down with them, and they're also being very aggressive in terms of how they go out and get those loan officers. I bring that up to you because it's an opportunity for you to continue to work with whoever you work with, but just do it under our umbrella. And we should always support our partners if we can. So that's my plug, but I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that. And if you want more details, go to your loan officer, because we're all working as a team. They're not like, territorial and saying that you can't bring in other people. They all want to work, to get as much capture rate as they possibly can. But the truth is these guys, they're no joke. Like they're doing a really nice job. I love the way they approach the business, and that's why I wanted to give them a quick shout out. So thank you guys. We're gonna do a couple quick hitters here. So question number 5, what is the goal when we take a listing? Shout them out. Highest and best price. Say that again.
Highest and best price, best terms and conditions.
Highest and best price, best terms and conditions. Yes. Shout it out. Get to the closing table. Go ahead, Jerry.
Build a relationship for referral.
Build a relationship for referrals. Anybody else? I can't hear you. Shout it loud. Get more business from them. Anything else? Okay. I'm gonna do a little bit more of this in my session later, and I'm gonna kind of talk about what I believe to be, the goal when we take a listing. Number 6, what is your go-to source for real estate information? Again, quick hitters. Is there anything that you're using? Somebody brought up the other day, Inman. Somebody brought up Keeping Current Matters. Shout it out. Jerry Jacob. That's one of my go-to sources. So Jerry Jacob is an absolute legend. If you don't know him, seek him out and give him a hug. Mike Panisi. There we go. I appreciate you. I'll pay you later. RPR. Anything else? Shout it out. Growth Mastermind. Oh, you guys want extra points. Go ahead. All right, Chris, do me a favor. Grab a microphone. I can't hear.
The GRA NAR economist presentation a couple weeks ago, and
Okay.
that's repeated several times over the year. I'm making sure that my agents are reading it, processing it, learning it, and regurgitating that back to their clients because they give so much better advice in a market that's really very volatile right now.
New Jersey Realtors.
New Jersey Realtors. Is there anything specifically that you look at?
I like to get, when they send out almost daily, the information that's going on and what's going on around the state.
So the newsletters.
And
Okay.
any of the new updates, especially like with the fire extinguishers and also with legislative issues.
Yeah. Okay. I go to a lot of conferences. So, that's something that is like also a really good thing. I went to NARAP more recently, the Housing Policy Conference. I thought that was excellent information. Anything else that we're missing? Any books? Podcasts?
National Association of Realtors also sends out.
NAR? Okay. You got something? I can come back to you if you want.
Yeah, I'll come back.
Go ahead.
Power Agents, Daryl Davis.
Power Agents from Daryl Davis. It's a good one. Can you shout either Chris? Yeah. Jeff Otto. That's another good one. ChatGPT. All right. Go ahead.
I follow the auto group in New Jersey specifically.
Jeff Otto, rather. Okay. All right. Listen, if nothing else, I just wanted to get like some sources that you guys are getting information from. It's always good to learn from others. Go ahead.
So there's a litigating attorney, his name is Jefferson Fisher. I started listening to him years ago, and he's a litigating attorney, and the goal of how to win every argument is wrong, because if you try to win every argument, someone's going to be upset with you.
Yeah.
So he just came out with a book. It's The Next Conversation.
Okay.
It's fabulous.
Ah,
It really
you give me something to read.
Oh, it's wonderful. You get so many insights from it, how to deal with narcissists. Sometimes we get listing agents, listers. One person happens to be a narcissist in there, and so
Yeah.
how to work with that person. So it's a great book. You can listen to his podcast and Instagram, but his name is Jefferson Fisher.
Jefferson Fisher. Okay. I got to be honest with you. I love like negotiation books and just understanding like how to deal with different people. The Power of a Positive No. That's a good book. Getting to Yes. That's a great book. You guys probably have heard of Never Split the Difference. There's a lot of those. So, and there's a Full Fee Agent is the sequel to Never Split the Difference, and it's specific to real estate. So if you haven't read that, that's a good one. All right, what do you think about exclusives? Not a fan. You believe on the open market. Who here believes in exclusives? Wow, it's a smaller crowd. Oh, I got more popping up. You guys are just afraid to hold your hands up. Who here hates exclusives? Hate's a strong word, but... Hate's a strong word. Doesn't like it? Dislikes? Okay. I'm going to talk black and white, so we're going to do hate and love. But what I'll say is we're going to do a whole segment about this. I don't care where you are in this argument, and it's perfectly fine. I'm going to take a completely neutral approach, but we are going to get educated on why you need to know about it in today's market. And you have to speak about it because you will get hurt if you don't, okay? Does Zillow matter to your clients? Oh, so they got like universal truth. Okay, good. Talk to us about inventory. We're almost done here. Is inventory up? Is it down? Do you feel like it's rising? Rising. If you feel like it's rising, where are you? South, north, central? Where are you in New Jersey?
North.
Central? North? You feel like it's rising or falling? Rising a little bit? Anybody? Anybody feel like it's dropping? Terry, I see you shaking your head. Bergen County's very low. Essex County, very low. I agree. Passaic County, very low.
So where in the north is it?
Okay. By the way, everything's relative. So like the way I look at it, and if you guys have never thought along these lines, when you think about inventory is by month supply, so you can do rate of absorption is the way you think about inventory. Rate of absorption refers to if no other listings came to market, how long would it take for all the buyers in the buyer pool to eat up the inventory that there is based on today's demand? So, 2 hours. So, using that as the example, like I always felt like 4 months is like a balanced market. You know, that's a neutral market if you have 4 months worth of inventory. If you're above that, it becomes a buyer's market. If you're below that, it's a seller's market. In a lot of the markets we serve, we're between 2 to 3 weeks. So, you know, obviously it's different depending on where you are in the state, but go back into your area, look up what the rate of absorption is. If it's less than a month, you're in a seller's market, period. You know, if it's less than 2 months, you're in a seller's market. If you're, you know, it may be changing, and you can do rate of absorption as a snapshot. You could do rate of absorption today versus rate of absorption 6 months ago, and you could look at, did it rise, did it fall? That's the way you figure out where you are inventory-wise. Go do that homework. It'll really educate you to your own market. Last thing, what has inspired you lately? Money inspires you. All right, I'll take it. Anything inspired you feel like this is like empowering and this is helpful? AI? Okay. Anything else? Getting to come to Growth Mastermind. See, this is what I was trying to do, get forced compliments. I appreciate that. That's how you come.
Nobody else does this. You know, no other.
I appreciate you. Thank you. So I always appreciate the compliments. I'm thinking like, is there anything that you've watched lately or you've read lately that like got you going? No? All right, think about that one. I want to give a shout out to one other person in the room, Jonathan. Raise your hand over here, give a wave. I never do this, but I'm doing this today on purpose. Years ago, so I knew John for most of my life at this point, and years ago, I had a conversation with him, and he's been a professional mover for as long as I can remember, for as long as we've known each other, probably 20 years. And he's never owned his own company. And I always said to him that if you go out and you do it the right way, you get insurance, you get a truck, I know he always took care of my clients, he's always done a nice job, but I said I'll never promote your business unless you own your own business. I know his wife, I know his kids, I know his family, they're beautiful people. But I always was like, if you go out and do all those things the right way, I promise you I will promote your business. He did this, not only did he do this months ago, and I kept saying, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna promote you, but he's also shown up to Growth Mastermind for the last 4 months because he just wants to just get a feel for what we're doing and part of the culture. So I appreciate you. Anybody who doesn't have a go-to moving company, Jonathan, New Height Movers, and please seek him out. He's got business cards, but I just know he'll take care of your clients, and I always want to make sure I take care of the people that are taking care of me and my clients through the years, and I appreciate the fact that you did what you needed to do for you and your family and did it the right way. So shout out to you.